And as Prime Minister Binyamin Netanyahu gets ready to address the General Assembly at the UN in New York to set the record straight on Israel, we're joined now by business development consultant Assaf Luxembourg for a discussion of the economic reality of Israel's advocacy problem. Mr. Luxembourg, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So also in the wake of these discussions that we've seen, basically the speeches by Abbas and Prime Minister Netanyahu, what can Israel do to improve its public image, public advocacy?
Well, I would say that first of all, before we talk about solutions, we need to better understand our problem.
Okay.
And I would say that I think in Israel we invented some sort of a false term we call hasbara.
Right. Which for our viewership means?
From the Hebrew word of explanation.
Right.
Now, I think hasbara for many Israelis come from the source of let's try to explain to the audience that we are right and the other side is wrong. Mm-hmm. Now, although I believe that is true as an Israeli, as a marketing guy, I understand that this is probably irrelevant for the majority of the broader conversation in Israel.
Right.
Because I would believe that the majority of the people around the world are not necessarily following the UN General Assembly right now. They care about sports, the economy, right, their mortgage, their kids' education.
Yeah. And
my question is, as a marketer, what is it that we Israelis or we Israel bring to them? Not just on specific days where there are big things happening, also on regular days. And I'm part of a school of thought that actually says that the Israel of beyond the conflict is much more appealing and much more interesting than the Israel of the conflict. So I think generally our problem is that we are waiting for someone to say something about the conflict, then we would answer back, but the conversation keeps around the conflict. And we have a lot of other things to share that are very relevant to the world.
Right.
So that's for our problem.
So practically speaking, right. So what exactly does this mean?
So more practically speaking, if I'll get to the solution part, strategically, what I think we have to do is niche marketing. Mm-hmm. Now, I think that what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is doing right now is actually very efficient as a hasbara act.
Right.
And that's what he said he's going to do. He's going to represent the truth of Israelis in the halls of the UN, if I remember. He said something similar to that.
Right.
Now, that is very effective for a specific target audience that is A, interested about the conflict, and B, ready to hear facts and historical figures before they make up their minds.
Okay.
Now, the question is, what do we do with the rest of the public audience out there? What do we convey to them?
So I'm going to have to stop you here for a second, Mr. Luxembourg, because I'm more interested in hearing really the economic perspective on all of this, really. What exactly is the impact on the economy?
At the end of the day, it's not just tourism as many people think. It's not let's bring more tourists to Israel and do PR for Israel.
Right.
It translates to foreign direct investments.
Okay.
So for example, a great case study that we as people who deal with these issues use a lot is the book Startup Nation, that not only retold the story in an effective way, it brought a lot of investors to Israel. Mm-hmm. The marketing power of the brand of Paris or Brazil is worth a lot of money to their economies. And in a way, you could claim that we have a deficiency in branding. A lot of times people come to Israel, they're very surprised for the good. They say, we didn't expect to see what we saw here.
But part of the reason why is because what they see in the news is, the strikes and the wars and all the conflict.
Exactly, because it's an interesting story, news-wise.
Right.
But for the average John Doe around the world, there are other things that we are very relevant at. For example, innovation, entrepreneurship, the environment, arts and culture, our historic story, the history of the land of Israel.
Saying that we should do away with diplomacy because that's going to have to be there no matter what, but the government should put more emphasis on marketing the country.
I think the government has done a long way in the past few years. There's still a longer way to go. I think that we have to put more efforts in what messages we convey, not during times like Protective Edge, but also in the other days of the year. Which messages do we convey in order for Israel to be associated with positive brands and not just a conflict in which we are either right or wrong?
Okay, well, on that note, Mr. Assaf Luxembourg, a business development consultant, thank you so very much for joining us and for giving us a better perspective of really what Israel's government should be focused on.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.